Chris Botham. Chris is an architectural designer with a passion for travel. In his free time away from the office, he's the creator, founder, and manager of the World Architecture Map website. Hands up if you're an architect in the room and you're on his website. Oh, there's somebody back there. You bastard. All right, well, I'm going to try and fix that by being nice to Chris. Will you give a big Martyrs and Pecha Kucha welcome to him? And all the presenters, it's a bit sticky up here. Somebody spilt a drink, I think.
All right. Ooh. All right, here goes nothing. Well, I'm going to be talking to you guys about a little bit about my website, worldarchitecturemap.org, as Peter mentioned. And the site's an online building index that indexes architecture of interest all over the world, and it does it through a tagging system and also through mapping utilities that makes them more accessible to people that may not be too familiar with it in the first place. So I got the idea for the site after I returned from a weekend trip to St. Louis, and I realized I'd failed to see two buildings while I was there. The Pulitzer Foundation by Tadao Ando, shown here at the top, and the Climatron Greenhouse by Bucky Fuller, shown here at the bottom. And being the stubborn person that I am, obviously I didn't want it to happen again, so I decided to create my own personal building index of every building I would ever want to visit. So that concept, obviously, I realized very quickly how massive it was in scale, and it quickly turned into an idea to create a website that anybody could go to, that I could ultimately share with you before it was a website, without really any big ideas in mind, just deciding that I liked to do this, so I was going to keep doing it. Subsequently, I got laid off from my job. This is my rendition of the carpet getting ripped out from under me. And after the initial shock wore off, I realized that I had all this free time on my hands, way too much free time, so I was going to jump into the website and see what happened out of it, because it was something that I liked doing. So the overall goal of the website, which is listed here, after reading it you can kind of get a sense of how massive the project really is, and also how it's a permanent work in progress. The idea is that it's never going to be done, because the built environment's always changing, so obviously the site needs to change with it. Now, being an architectural designer, I had no idea how to build a website or any idea about how the web works, basically, behind the scenes. So I learned very quickly two things needed to be in place for a site like this to function. The first of which is a database, the boring part, but it's ultimately what gives the content credibility, shown here at the top. The second piece is the methods of data visualization, which is the fun stuff, what people like to look at, the most basic of which just being a map. And the idea is to get these two pieces to talk cohesively to one another. So I designed the database around the idea of tagging, which we're all familiar with. I've listed all the architectural tags in the slide here, so you get a sense of the scope that the website has achieved so far. There's a little less than 475 of them. And for every building, I put the tags in 6 buckets: architect, style, date. Okay, apparently I can't remember the other 3 of them. So if we take a building like the Sears Tower and we list all the terms in the database that it's queried by, you can see that the bottom 2/3 of the list aren't technical data. They're just intuitive terms people use to describe architecture that, to this scale, they've never been indexed by before. So you can see that you can search for architecture just by using terms that you would use when you're seeing it. And I've also mapped every building in the database to its exact GPS coordinates, which makes the maps a lot more precise and is a lot better than just using an address or a neighborhood, which really wouldn't work for a building like Machu Picchu, which doesn't have any streets around it. And some of the other databases do that. That's the only reason why I bring it up. So the next part is the fun part, data visualization. And I've shown a couple pieces here that everybody's familiar with, Google Maps and Google Street View. The great thing about these is they're interactive. You can get around and you can basically waste time, which is one of the things I like to do with the website. So I'm going to touch on 3 different pieces of data visualization really quick. The first 3 that I've designed for the site out of many that are in plan for it. The first of which is just maps, which we've already seen, pretty basic. And the other 2 are 2 search functions that allow you to query the database in different ways. One allows you to query it through tags, and the other allows you to query it through location. I knew I was going to talk too fast. All right, so looking at a map here of the United States, I think I have a little over 800 buildings listed in it so far. I always kind of just want to get in and start moving around. The great thing about Google Maps is you can do that. You can pan, you can click on You can click on different points and see different things. And I always find it fascinating how the clustering obviously always happens around major metropolitan areas. So the two search functions I'll talk about, the first of which is a tag search, which allows you to cross-reference different terms in the database and get a customized data set out of that relating to your query. And the second is a proximity search, which allows you to input either a building, an address, or a neighborhood and find out within a given distance what other architecture is around there that the site has indexed. So let's say you just got back from a trip to Barcelona and you can't remember what building that was you saw that's shaped like a triangle and colored blue. Well, you can cross-reference those three terms with a tag search, triangle, blue, and Barcelona, and it'll bring you right to the Barcelona forum by Herzog and Demiron. And then you can move on from there with whatever your original query was, knowing that that's the building you were looking for. Or let's say you were on the south side at the Roby House. You just got done with a tour and you had some free time. Right. And you're wondering what else is around there. Well, you can use a proximity search, which allows you to search within a given distance of the Roby House itself, an address, the neighborhood that it's in, or anything like that. And if you did that, you'd find out that just a couple blocks away on the University of Chicago campus is the newly constructed Mansueto Library by Murphy-Yawn, which is shaping up to be a pretty gnarly piece of architecture. I believe it's the first lattice shell in Chicago, but don't quote me on that. So you can see that the two search functions, they really have their own distinct uses, but you can also put them together and get some pretty interesting things as well, especially to augment travel plans. So for argument's sake, let's say you're taking a trip to New York City and you're trying to, or you're really into high-tech modern architecture and you want to know what's there. So you cross-reference those two terms, get to these four buildings: the Hayden Planetarium, the Hearst Tower, the New York Times Building, and the Morgan Library. So after more research, yeah, you figure out these are the buildings I want to see while I'm there. Well, it's very easy to do a query from the database that you already did and then look for a map to map them on a, there you go. So you find out, yeah, they're in relatively close proximity to each other in the urban scale at least, so maybe that starts to inform, okay, that's where I want my hotel to be, is somewhere in the blue area. Or if you already have your hotel booked, you can start to figure out how you're going to get around the city by using those points as your destinations, which they ultimately will be when you're going there for your trip. So one big vision I have for the site is for it to be truly global. Like every nook and cranny in the world has something to offer as far as the built environment goes, so I want WAM to include all of it. And I've shown a few world-class cities here that you can see the concept spreads very quickly, and you can also start to see different areas where you might want to travel to in these cities. Depending on what your interests are, you can align that with the database. So I close with a couple of stats about the site, just so you can see how far it's came in its 11 months of life, and also how far it still has to go. And I also want to say that the site was built upon a very strong foundation of collaboration and getting dialogues going. So if anybody wants to submit work, Peter, wherever you are, or open up a dialogue about it or anything like that, don't hesitate to get at me any way you can. Thanks for your time.
All right. Hey, Chris. Nice work in less than a year. What's up, Chris? All right, don't go too far away. Welcome back.